Officer Marcus Thompson had been walking his beat for 12 years, but he had never experienced a night like this one. The rain pounded against his uniform as he made his way through the narrow streets of Riverside District, one of the city's most neglected neighborhoods. Most officers avoided this area after dark, but Marcus believed every citizen deserved protection, no matter where they lived. The emergency call had come in at 9:47 p.m., reports of suspicious activity near the abandoned warehouse on Elm Street. Marcus radioed his location to dispatch and approached the building cautiously. The structure loomed before him like a giant shadow, its broken windows staring down at him like empty eye sockets. He had investigated this place before, usually finding nothing more than homeless people seeking shelter or teenagers looking for a place to hang out. As Marcus circled the building, his flashlight cutting through the darkness, he heard voices from inside. Multiple voices, and they didn't sound friendly. He called for backup on his radio, but the only response was static. The storm must have interfered with the signal. Standard protocol dictated that he should wait for assistance, but the voices were getting louder, and he thought he heard someone crying for help. Marcus made the decision that would change his life forever. He entered the warehouse through a side door that had been pried open. The smell hit him immediately, a mixture of dampness, decay, and something else he couldn't identify. His boots echoed on the concrete floor as he moved deeper into the building, following the sound of voices toward what appeared to be an office area in the back. That's when everything went wrong. The floor beneath him gave way without warning, sending him plummeting 15 feet into what must have been an old storage basement. The impact was devastating. Marcus felt his leg snap as he hit the concrete below, and pain shot through his entire body like lightning. His flashlight flew from his hand, spinning through the air before shattering against the wall, plunging him into complete darkness. Marcus tried to call out, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. The fall had knocked the wind from his lungs, and every breath felt like knives cutting through his chest. He reached for his radio with trembling hands, but it had been destroyed in the fall. The voices above had gone silent, and he realized with growing horror that whoever had been in the warehouse was now gone, probably spooked by the sound of his accident. Hours passed like an eternity. Marcus drifted in and out of consciousness, his body growing weaker with each passing moment. He tried to move, but the pain in his leg was unbearable, and he suspected he had injured his ribs as well. The basement was like a tomb, cold and silent except for the steady drip of water from somewhere in the darkness. By morning, when Marcus failed to check in with dispatch, a search would begin. But the warehouse was vast, and the hole he had fallen through was hidden in shadows. His fellow officers searched the main floor thoroughly, but never thought to look for a basement entrance. The official report would later state that Officer Thompson had disappeared while investigating a disturbance, possibly the victim of foul play. Marcus's wife, Sarah, refused to give up hope. She organized search parties and put up missing person posters throughout the city. His two young children, Emma and Jake, asked every day when Daddy would come home. The entire police department worked overtime trying to find their missing colleague. But as days turned into weeks, hope began to fade. Meanwhile, Marcus lay trapped in his concrete prison, surviving on rainwater that seeped through cracks in the ceiling. His uniform, once pressed and professional, became tattered and dirty. His service weapon remained in its holster, useless in his current situation. He thought about his family constantly, wondering if he would ever see them again. The basement had become his world, a space roughly 20 feet square with concrete walls and no apparent exit. During the day, thin streams of light filtered down from above, giving him just enough illumination to see his surroundings. At night, the darkness was so complete he might as well have been blind. He learned to navigate by touch, feeling his way along the walls, searching desperately for any means of escape. Marcus discovered he wasn't the first person to fall into this trap. In one corner, he found the remains of what appeared to be construction equipment, probably left behind when the building was abandoned years earlier. There were also signs that homeless people had used this space at some point, though it had clearly been empty for a long time. As his strength continued to fade, Marcus began to accept that he might die in this place. He thought about the letter he would write to his family if he had paper and pen. He would tell Sarah how much he loved her, how proud he was of their children, and how sorry he was for taking the risk that led to this moment. He would tell Emma and Jake to be strong, to take care of their mother, and to remember that their father had died trying to help others. The rain continued to fall outside, and Marcus learned to position himself to catch as much of it as possible when it dripped through the ceiling. It was his only source of water, and he knew that without it he would have already died of dehydration. Food was another matter entirely. He had finished the energy bar from his uniform pocket on the second day, and since then, he had eaten nothing. On what Marcus calculated to be his 8th day in the basement, he heard something that made his heart race, footsteps above, light and quick, not like the heavy boots of his fellow officers who had searched the building days earlier. These sounded different, almost cautious, as if whoever was walking was trying not to make noise. Marcus gathered what little strength he had left and called out, his voice hoarse and barely audible. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment there was complete silence. Then he heard whispers, young voices speaking in hushed tones. Children, he realized, with a mixture of hope and concern. What were children doing in this dangerous place? He called out again, louder this time, ignoring the pain it caused in his chest. The whispers stopped abruptly, followed by the sound of running feet. Marcus's heart sank as he realized the children had been frightened away. He had missed his chance, perhaps his only chance of being discovered. But unknown to Marcus, those footsteps belonged to 2 sisters who would soon become the most important people in his life. Maya and Rosa Gutierrez lived just 3 blocks away from the warehouse with their grandmother, and they had been using the abandoned building as a shortcut home from school. They were poor, wearing clothes that had been handed down through multiple families, but they possessed something far more valuable than money, compassion and courage that would soon be put to the ultimate test. Maya Gutierrez was only 12 years old, but she had already learned to be responsible for herself and her younger sister Rosa. Their grandmother, Elena, worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. Most days, the sisters walked home from school alone, taking whatever route seemed safest through the rough neighborhood they called home. Rosa was 10, with big brown eyes that seemed to see everything around her. Unlike other children her age, she rarely complained about their situation. She had learned early that complaining wouldn't change anything, and she preferred to focus on the small joys in life, like the stray dog that had started following them home from school each day. The dog was a medium-sized mixed breed with golden fur that had seen better days. His ribs showed through his coat, and he walked with a slight limp, suggesting he had been on the streets for quite some time. Maya had wanted to bring him home, but their grandmother barely had enough money to feed the family, let alone a pet. Still, the sisters shared their school lunches with him whenever they could, and he seemed to understand that they were his friends. On that particular afternoon, the sisters had decided to cut through the abandoned warehouse because storm clouds were gathering, and they wanted to get home before the rain started. They had used this route before, though their grandmother had strictly forbidden it. The building gave them the creeps, but it cut 15 minutes off their walk, and sometimes 15 minutes made the difference between getting caught in a downpour or staying dry. The dog, whom Rosa had secretly named Lucky, followed them into the warehouse as usual. But this time something was different. Instead of staying close to the sisters as he normally did, Lucky began acting strangely. He stopped near the center of the building and started whining, a sound that made both girls uncomfortable. Maya told Rosa they should leave immediately, but Lucky wouldn't move. He stood in one spot, looking down at the floor and making soft crying sounds that neither sister had heard from him before. Rosa approached the dog carefully, trying to see what had captured his attention. That's when she heard it, a faint voice calling for help from somewhere below. At first, Rosa thought she was imagining things. The voice was so weak and hoarse that it barely sounded human. She called Maya over, and both sisters listened carefully. There it was again, definitely a person's voice, and it seemed to be coming from underneath the floor. Maya's first instinct was to run. Every adult in their lives had taught them to avoid strangers, especially in places like this. But Rosa grabbed her sister's arm and pointed to a spot on the floor where Lucky was now pawing frantically. Looking more closely, they could see that part of the concrete had collapsed, creating a hole just wide enough for a person to fall through. The sisters lay down on their stomachs and peered into the darkness below. Maya took out her phone and turned on its flashlight, shining the beam down into what appeared to be a basement. The light revealed a man in a police uniform, sitting propped against a wall with one leg bent at an unnatural angle. Please, the man whispered, his voice barely audible. Help me. Rosa's heart broke at the sight. The police officer looked terrible, his uniform dirty and torn, his face pale and drawn. She could see that he had been hurt badly, and from the smell coming up from the basement, she knew he had been trapped down there for a long time. Maya was torn between fear and compassion. She had been taught not to trust police officers in their neighborhood, where interactions with law enforcement were often negative. But this man wasn't threatening anyone. He was hurt and helpless, and he needed their help. We should call 911, Maya whispered to her sister. Rosa nodded, but when Maya tried to use her phone, she discovered there was no signal inside the warehouse. They would have to go outside to make the call, which meant leaving the injured officer alone again. Don't leave me, Marcus pleaded, having heard their whispered conversation. Please, I've been here for over a week. My name is Marcus Thompson. I'm with the city police. My family doesn't know where I am. The desperation in his voice convinced both sisters that this was no trick. This man was genuinely hurt and scared, just like they would be in the same situation. Rosa made the decision that would change everything. We won't leave you, she called down to him. We're going to get help. Maya wanted to argue, to tell her sister that they should just call the police and let the adults handle it. But something about the officer's condition told her that time was running out. He looked like he might not survive much longer without immediate help. The sisters ran outside, with Lucky close behind them. Maya's phone immediately picked up a signal, and she dialed 911 with trembling fingers. When the dispatcher answered, Maya tried to explain the situation, but her English wasn't perfect and she was speaking too fast from nervousness. Slow down, honey, the dispatcher said kindly. What's the emergency? There's a police officer trapped in the old warehouse on Elm Street, Maya managed to say. He fell through the floor into a basement. He's hurt really bad. The dispatcher asked for more details, and Maya did her best to provide the address and describe what they had found. But she could hear the skepticism in the woman's voice. Children called in false reports sometimes, and the story probably sounded unbelievable. We'll send someone to check it out, the dispatcher promised. But Maya could tell this wouldn't be treated as an urgent call. Rosa tugged on her sister's sleeve. She doesn't believe us, does she? Maya shook her head. She knew that by the time police arrived to investigate, it might be too late. The officer had looked like he was barely alive, and every minute counted. That's when Rosa made a decision that would later be called both brave and foolish. We have to help him ourselves, she told her sister. Maya stared at Rosa in disbelief. What do you mean? We're just kids. We can't get him out of there. Maybe we can't get him out, Rosa replied, but we can help him until the police come. He needs water and food. He probably hasn't eaten in days. Maya looked back at the warehouse, then at her younger sister's determined face. Rosa had always been the brave one, the sister who stood up to bullies and never backed down from a challenge. But this was different. This was dangerous. Grandma is going to kill us if she finds out, Maya said. Grandma always tells us to help people when we can, Rosa replied. This man needs help, and we're the only ones who know where he is. Lucky seemed to agree with Rosa's plan. The dog ran back toward the warehouse entrance, then stopped and looked back at the sisters as if urging them to follow. It was as though he understood that time was running out for the man trapped below. The sisters hurried home as fast as they could, their minds racing with plans to help the trapped officer. Their small apartment was on the third floor of an old building that had seen better days. The paint was peeling from the walls, and the stairs creaked with every step, but it was home. And it was filled with the love their grandmother Elena provided, despite their difficult circumstances. Elena Gutierrez was in the kitchen preparing dinner when the girls burst through the front door. At 62, she had raised 5 children of her own before taking in Maya and Rosa after their parents died in a car accident 3 years earlier. Her hands were weathered from years of cleaning houses and working in restaurant kitchens, but her heart remained soft and generous. Abuela, Rosa said breathlessly, using the Spanish word for grandmother that came naturally to her when she was excited or upset. Elena immediately knew something was wrong. She had raised enough children to recognize the look on Rosa's face, a mixture of determination and fear that usually meant trouble. Maya tried to explain what they had found, speaking quickly in a mixture of English and Spanish. Elena listened with growing concern as the story unfolded. A police officer trapped in the basement of the abandoned warehouse, hurt and alone for over a week, barely alive. Did you call the police? Elena asked, her voice steady despite her worry. Yes, but I don't think they believed me, Maya admitted. The lady on the phone sounded like she thought it was a prank call. Elena sat down heavily in her favorite chair, the one with the worn fabric that she covered with a colorful blanket she had knitted herself. She had lived in this neighborhood long enough to know that the police didn't always respond quickly to calls from their area, especially when children were involved. We have to help him, Abuela, Rosa pleaded. He looks so sick. I think he might die if nobody helps him soon. Elena looked at her granddaughters, seeing their father's compassionate nature reflected in their faces. Their father had been a good man who always helped his neighbors, even when his own family struggled. It seemed his daughters had inherited his generous heart. What do you want to do, Misha? Elena asked Rosa, using the affectionate term that meant my daughter. We want to bring him food and water, Rosa explained. And maybe some blankets to keep him warm, just until the police come to rescue him. Elena considered this carefully. The warehouse was dangerous, and she didn't like the idea of her granddaughters going there alone. But she also knew what it felt like to be helpless and forgotten, and the thought of an injured man suffering alone in the darkness broke her heart. I will come with you, Elena decided. But first we prepare properly. The three women worked together to gather supplies. Elena filled an old thermos with hot soup she had been making for dinner. Maya packed bottles of water, crackers, and sandwiches into a canvas bag. Rosa found a warm blanket and added a small pillow that would make the officer more comfortable. Elena also included a first aid kit she kept for emergencies, though she knew their supplies were limited. She added some pain medication, bandages, and antiseptic cream. It wasn't much, but it might help until professional medical care arrived. As they prepared to leave, Lucky appeared at their apartment door, somehow having found his way to the third floor. The dog seemed to understand that something important was happening, and he wasn't going to be left behind. The walk to the warehouse felt different this time. Elena's presence gave the sisters confidence, but the elderly woman moved slowly and Rosa worried that they were taking too long. The officer had looked so weak when they found him, and every minute might matter. When they reached the warehouse, Elena was shocked by how dangerous the building looked. Broken glass covered the ground around the entrance, and the structure appeared ready to collapse in several places. She almost changed her mind about entering, but Rosa's pleading eyes convinced her to continue. Inside, Lucky immediately led them to the spot where Marcus was trapped. Elena shone her flashlight down into the basement and gasped at what she saw. The police officer looked even worse than her granddaughters had described. His face was gaunt, his lips cracked from dehydration, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who had given up hope. Sir, Elena called down in accented English, my granddaughters found you. We brought food and water. Marcus looked up with difficulty, hardly believing what he was seeing. 3 faces peered down at him from above, 2 young girls and an older woman, all showing genuine concern for his welfare. After more than a week of believing he would die alone and forgotten, the sight of these good Samaritans brought tears to his eyes. Thank you, he whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. I thought no one would ever find me. Elena quickly took charge of the situation. She tied one end of a rope she had brought to a sturdy pipe, then carefully lowered the bag of food and water down to Marcus. The thermos of hot soup followed, and finally the blanket and pillow. Marcus received these gifts like a man dying of thirst receives water. The hot soup was the most delicious thing he had ever tasted, even though it was a simple vegetable broth made from whatever Elena had in her kitchen. The warmth spread through his body, giving him strength he hadn't felt in days. The police are coming, Maya called down to him. We called 911. Marcus nodded, though he knew from experience that emergency responses in this neighborhood could be slow. He had worked these streets long enough to understand the reality of the situation. Elena studied the basement carefully with her flashlight, looking for any way they might be able to help Marcus escape on their own. But the hole was too deep, and the officer's injuries were too severe for them to attempt a rescue without proper equipment. We're not going to leave you alone, Rosa promised. We'll stay until help comes. Elena looked at her granddaughter with pride. Despite their poverty, despite all the hardships they had faced, Rosa had learned the most important lesson of all, that we are responsible for taking care of each other. As evening approached, Elena made another difficult decision. She sent Maya home to call the police again, this time with more specific information about Marcus's location and condition. She hoped that a second call with better details would receive more urgent attention. Maya reluctantly agreed to leave, though she wanted to stay with Rosa and their grandmother. Lucky decided to go with Maya, perhaps sensing that she needed protection on the walk home through the darkening streets. Alone with Rosa, Elena settled in for what might be a long wait. She had brought extra blankets for themselves, knowing they might need to stay through the night. Every few minutes she called down words of encouragement to Marcus, letting him know he wasn't alone. Marcus, meanwhile, felt more hope than he had experienced since his fall. The food and water had given him physical strength, but the presence of these three strangers had given him something more important, the will to keep fighting. He thought about his own children, and how proud he would be if Emma and Jake showed the same courage and compassion these sisters had demonstrated. As darkness fell over the warehouse, Elena began to worry about whether help would actually come. She knew that if the police didn't arrive by morning, they would need a new plan. But for now, all they could do was wait and pray that someone would listen to Maya's second call for help. Maya ran through the empty streets with Lucky beside her heart pounding with worry and determination. The neighborhood looked different at night, shadows hiding familiar landmarks and making every corner seem threatening. But the loyal dog stayed close, and his presence gave her courage to keep moving. When Maya reached their apartment building, she took the stairs two at a time, Lucky following close behind despite his limp. She burst into their home and immediately grabbed the phone, dialing 911 for the second time that day. This time Maya was more prepared. She spoke slowly and clearly, giving the dispatcher exact details about Marcus's location and condition. She explained that they had already provided food and water to the trapped officer, and that her grandmother was staying with him to make sure he wasn't alone. "Ma'am, this is very serious," Maya said, using the most grown-up voice she could manage. "The police officer is hurt really bad. He said his name is Marcus Thompson, and he's been trapped for more than a week. If nobody helps him soon, I think he's going to die." The dispatcher, recognizing the sincerity in Maya's voice and the specific details she provided, realized this was no prank call. She immediately contacted the police department's emergency response team and requested that units be sent to the warehouse location. Meanwhile, back at the warehouse, Elena and Rosa maintained their vigil beside the hole where Marcus lay trapped. Elena had found some old cardboard boxes that they arranged to sit on, making their uncomfortable watch a little more bearable. Rosa had brought her homework with her, and by the light of Elena's flashlight, she worked on her math problems while keeping Marcus company. "What grade are you in, Rosa?" Marcus asked, his voice stronger now thanks to the nourishment they had provided. "Fifth grade," Rosa replied. "I like math, but I'm better at reading. Maya is really smart too. She wants to be a doctor someday." Marcus smiled at this, thinking of his own daughter Emma, who was about the same age as Rosa. "I bet you could be a doctor too if that's what you want. You're already helping people." Elena listened to this conversation with mixed emotions. She was proud of her granddaughters for their compassion, but worried about their safety in this dangerous building. Every few minutes she heard creaking sounds from somewhere in the structure, reminding her that the warehouse was far from stable. "Tell me about your family," Elena called down to Marcus, wanting to keep him talking and alert. Marcus's eyes lit up as he described Sarah, Emma, and Jake. He talked about his wife's job as a school nurse, his daughter's love of soccer, and his son's fascination with dinosaurs. Speaking about his family gave him strength and reminded him of all the reasons he needed to survive this ordeal. "They must be very worried about you," Rosa observed. "Yes, I'm sure they are," Marcus replied quietly. "Sarah probably hasn't slept since I disappeared. She's the strongest person I know, but this must be killing her." Elena felt her heart break for this man's family. She thought about how she would feel if one of her granddaughters went missing, and the agony Sarah Thompson must be experiencing. It reinforced her determination to help however she could. An hour passed, then two, with no sign of the police rescue team. Elena began to worry that Maya's second call had been dismissed just like the first one. She was considering sending Rosa home to make another call when they heard the sound they had been waiting for. Sirens in the distance. "Do you hear that?" Rosa asked excitedly. "The police are coming." Marcus felt a surge of hope mixed with disbelief. After days of thinking he would die alone in this basement, rescue was finally on the way. But he had learned not to get his hopes up too quickly. The sirens might be heading somewhere else, or the responding officers might not be able to find him in the massive warehouse. The sirens grew louder, and soon Elena could see flashing lights through the broken windows of the warehouse. Multiple police cars had arrived, along with what sounded like a fire truck and an ambulance. The cavalry had finally arrived. Elena and Rosa heard heavy footsteps and authoritative voices as the rescue team entered the building. Elena called out loudly, guiding them toward the location where Marcus was trapped. "Over here. He's down here." Officer David Chen was the first to reach them, followed closely by Fire Captain Rodriguez and 2 paramedics. Chen immediately recognized Elena and Rosa as the civilians who had called for help, and he was struck by the scene he found. An elderly woman and a young girl maintaining a vigil over their colleague who lay trapped in the basement below. "Ma'am, I need you and the child to step back for safety," Officer Chen said respectfully. "We'll take over from here." Elena nodded but didn't move far. After spending hours caring for Marcus, she felt personally invested in his rescue. Rosa clung to her grandmother's hand, watching with fascination as the professionals took control of the situation. Captain Rodriguez shone a powerful flashlight down into the basement, and what he saw made him whistle in amazement. "Thompson! Marcus Thompson. Is that really you, buddy?" "Rodriguez?" Marcus called back, hardly believing his ears. "Is that you, you old fool?" The 2 men had worked together early in their careers, before Rodriguez transferred to the fire department. The captain's presence gave Marcus even more hope that his ordeal was finally coming to an end. "We're going to get you out of there, Marcus," Rodriguez promised. "Just hang on a little longer." The rescue operation began immediately. The fire department had brought specialized equipment for exactly this type of emergency: ropes, pulleys, and a stretcher designed for confined space rescues. The paramedics lowered medical supplies down to Marcus while the firefighters rigged their equipment. Elena watched with admiration as the professionals worked with smooth efficiency. But she also felt proud knowing that she and her granddaughters had kept Marcus alive until this moment. Without their intervention, he might not have survived long enough for the rescue team to find him. As the paramedics prepared Marcus for the difficult journey out of the basement, one of them called up to Elena. "Ma'am, what you and these girls did probably saved this man's life. The food and water you provided made all the difference." Elena felt tears in her eyes. She had spent her entire life helping others, her children, her grandchildren, her neighbors, her employers, but she had never received recognition for her efforts. To hear a professional acknowledge that her actions had saved a life meant more to her than she could express. Rosa squeezed her grandmother's hand. "We did good, didn't we, Abuela?" "Yes, mija," Elena replied. "We did very good." The actual rescue took another hour. Marcus had to be carefully immobilized to prevent further injury to his leg and ribs, then slowly raised through the narrow opening. Every movement caused him tremendous pain, but he endured it stoically, knowing that freedom and proper medical care waited above. When Marcus finally emerged from the basement that had been his prison for 9 days, Elena and Rosa were the first faces he saw. Despite his pain and exhaustion, he managed to smile at them. "Thank you," he whispered as the paramedics loaded him onto a gurney. "Thank you for not giving up on me." The ambulance raced through the city streets toward General Hospital, its sirens cutting through the night air. Inside, paramedic Jennifer Walsh worked steadily to stabilize Marcus Thompson, checking his vital signs and starting an IV line to combat the severe dehydration that had nearly killed him. "You're one lucky man, Officer Thompson," Jennifer told him as she monitored his blood pressure. "Another day or 2 in that basement and we might not have been able to save you." Marcus nodded weakly, thinking about Elena, Rosa, and Maya. "The family that found me," he managed to say. "Make sure someone thanks them properly. They saved my life." At the hospital, Dr. Sarah Kim was waiting in the emergency room when the ambulance arrived. She had been briefed on Marcus's condition during the ride, and she immediately ordered x-rays and blood tests to determine the extent of his injuries. The preliminary examination revealed a broken leg, 3 cracked ribs, severe dehydration, and signs of malnutrition. Meanwhile, back at the warehouse, Officer Chen was taking detailed statements from Elena and Rosa. He was amazed by their story and particularly impressed by the courage these two had shown in helping a stranger. "Mrs. Gutierrez," Officer Chen said, "I want you to know that what you and your granddaughters did tonight will not be forgotten. Officer Thompson is alive because of your actions." Elena felt embarrassed by the praise. "We only did what anyone should do," she said modestly. "When someone needs help, you help them." Maya arrived just as the ambulance was pulling away, Lucky still by her side. She was disappointed to have missed seeing Marcus rescued, but relieved to learn that he was finally on his way to proper medical care. Officer Chen made arrangements for a police car to drive the family home safely. As they rode through the quiet streets, Rosa asked the question that had been bothering her all evening. "Will the police officer be okay?" She wanted to know. "The doctors will take good care of him," Chen assured her. "And thanks to you girls, he has a much better chance of making a full recovery." At General Hospital, word of Marcus Thompson's rescue spread quickly through the building. Nurses and doctors who had known Marcus from his many visits to the hospital during his 12 years on the force stopped by to check on him. Everyone wanted to hear the story of his dramatic rescue. Dr. Kim worked through the night to treat Marcus's injuries. The broken leg required surgery to repair, and his malnutrition and dehydration needed careful management, but she was optimistic about his chances for a complete recovery. "You're going to be here for a while, Officer Thompson," she told him as he was prepared for surgery, "but considering what you've been through, you're in remarkable condition." The next morning brought news that changed everything for Elena and her granddaughters. A reporter from the local newspaper had heard about the rescue and wanted to interview the family who had saved the police officer's life. Elena was hesitant about talking to the press, but Maya convinced her that sharing their story might help other people understand the importance of helping neighbors in need. The reporter, Janet Miller, was a veteran journalist who had covered crime stories for 20 years. But she had never encountered a story quite like this one. 3 females from one of the city's poorest neighborhoods had risked their own safety to help a police officer they didn't know, staying with him for hours until professional help arrived. "What made you decide to help Officer Thompson?" Janet asked Rosa during the interview. Rosa thought carefully about her answer. "My grandmother always teaches us that we should help people when they need help," she finally said. "The police officer was hurt and scared, just like I would be. So we helped him." Janet was struck by the simple wisdom in Rosa's words. In a world where people often ignored others' suffering, this young girl had seen a person in need and responded with pure compassion. The newspaper story ran on the front page the next day, with the headline, "Local Family Saves Trapped Police Officer." The article included photos of Elena, Maya, and Rosa, as well as Lucky, who had become an integral part of their story. The response to the article was immediate and overwhelming. The newspaper's phone rang constantly with calls from people who wanted to help the Gutierrez family. Many callers had been moved by the story of how these poor but generous people had shared what little they had with a stranger in desperate need. Mrs. Patterson, who owned a small grocery store in the neighborhood, called to offer the family free groceries for a month. "These people have hearts of gold," she told Janet Miller. "The least we can do is make sure they never go hungry." A local church organized a fundraiser to help pay for Rosa and Maya's school supplies and clothes. The congregation had been inspired by the family's example of Christian charity in action. Even the police department was moved to action. Chief Williams announced that the department would be presenting Elena, Maya, and Rosa with civilian commendation awards for their heroic actions. "These 3 individuals represent the very best of our community," the chief declared at a press conference. They saw someone in need and responded without thinking about their own safety or convenience. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Marcus Thompson's wife, Sarah, visited Elena's apartment 3 days after the rescue, bringing her children Emma and Jake with her. Sarah was a composed woman, but she broke down in tears when she met Elena face to face. "I don't know how to thank you," she said through her sobs. "You gave me back my husband. You gave my children back their father." Elena embraced Sarah warmly, understanding the depth of her relief and gratitude. "Your husband is a good man," Elena said softly. "He spoke about you and the children the whole time. His love for you kept him strong." Emma and Jake stood quietly beside their mother, still processing the fact that these strangers had saved their father's life. Rosa and Maya welcomed them shyly, And soon the children were talking together while their mothers and grandmothers shared coffee and stories. Marcus told me that Rosa read to him while they waited for help, Sarah said, wiping her eyes. He said it reminded him of bedtime stories with Emma and Jake. In that dark, scary place, your granddaughter gave him comfort and hope. Elena felt proud watching Rosa interact with Emma and Jake. Despite the difference in their circumstances, the Thompson children wore expensive clothes and carried the latest electronic gadgets. Rosa treated them as equals, sharing her simple toys and showing them pictures she had drawn. Lucky, who had been sleeping in the corner, woke up and approached the Thompson children cautiously. Jake, who loved animals, immediately asked if he could pet the dog. Soon Lucky was enjoying more attention than he had ever received, his tail wagging as 3 children showered him with affection. We'd like to do something for Lucky too, Sarah said. Noticing how attached the children had become to the scruffy stray dog, Marcus mentioned that this dog helped lead you to him. Maybe we could help with veterinary care or food or whatever he needs. Maya's eyes lit up. The family had wanted to properly care for Lucky, but couldn't afford veterinary bills or even regular dog food. That would be amazing, she said. Lucky has been so good to us, but we can't give him everything he deserves. Sarah made a mental note to contact a veterinarian as soon as possible. After what this family had done for Marcus, helping care for their dog seemed like a small way to show ongoing gratitude. The visit lasted 2 hours, during which time strong bonds formed between the two families. Despite their different backgrounds and economic situations, they discovered they shared similar values about family, community, and helping others. As the Thompsons prepared to leave, Sarah pressed an envelope into Elena's hands. "This is just a small thank you," she said. "Please don't refuse it. You saved the most precious thing in my life." Elena tried to protest, but Sarah insisted. After the family left, Elena opened the envelope to find $500 in cash, more money than she usually saw in 2 months of work. That evening, as the sisters did their homework, and Elena prepared a special dinner to celebrate the day's events, they reflected on how much their lives had changed since yesterday. The money from the Thompsons would pay for Rosa's new school shoes and Maya's science project supplies. But more importantly, they had gained new friends and the satisfaction of knowing they had made a real difference in someone's life. "Abuela," Rosa said as they sat down to eat, "do you think Officer Thompson will remember us when he gets better?" Elena smiled at her youngest granddaughter. "Mija, I think Officer Thompson will remember us for the rest of his life. And I think we'll remember him too." Outside their window, the neighborhood looked the same as always. Tired buildings, broken streetlights, and people struggling to get by. But inside their small apartment, 3 hearts were full of the knowledge that when the moment came to choose between indifference and compassion, they had chosen wisely. Lucky lay contentedly at Rosa's feet, his belly full for the first time in months thanks to the Thompsons' generosity. Tomorrow Sarah would take him to the veterinarian for a complete checkup and vaccinations. He would finally have a real home with people who loved him. As night fell over the city, Elena tucked her granddaughters into the bed they shared, whispering prayers of gratitude for their safety and for the opportunity to help someone in need. Maya and Rosa fell asleep quickly, exhausted. 2 weeks after his rescue, Marcus Thompson was finally well enough to receive visitors beyond his immediate family. The first people he asked to see were Elena, Maya, and Rosa Gutierrez. The hospital staff had heard so much about the family who saved Officer Thompson that they were excited to meet them in person. When Elena entered Marcus's hospital room with her granddaughters, she was amazed at the transformation. The man who had been pale and gaunt in the basement now looked healthy and strong, despite the cast on his leg and the bandages around his ribs. "Rosa, Maya," Marcus called out with genuine joy, his face lighting up at the sight of his rescuers. "And Mrs. Elena, I can't believe you're here." Rosa ran to his bedside, careful not to bump his injured leg. "Are you feeling better, Officer Thompson? Do your bones still hurt?" Marcus laughed at her direct question, remembering why he had enjoyed talking with Rosa during their long hours together in the warehouse basement. "My bones are healing very well thanks to you girls. The doctors say I'm going to be just fine." Maya hung back slightly, still somewhat shy around adults she didn't know well. But Marcus's warm smile encouraged her to come closer. "We brought you something," she said, pulling a handmade card from her backpack. The card was decorated with colorful drawings and filled with messages from Rosa's entire fifth-grade class. When Maya had told her classmates about their adventure, the children had insisted on making a get-well card for the police officer their friend had helped save. "This is beautiful," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion as he read the children's messages. "Thank you so much. I'll treasure this forever." Elena watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction. Seeing Marcus healthy and surrounded by his own family gave her a deep sense of completion. Their decision to help him had been the right one, and the outcome had exceeded her wildest hopes. "Officer Thompson," Elena said formally, "we are very happy to see you recovering so well." "Please call me Marcus," he replied. "After what we've been through together, we're family now." Marcus had spent his recovery time thinking about how to properly thank the Gutierrez family for saving his life. Money seemed inadequate for such a gift, but he had come up with an idea that he hoped would make a lasting difference in their lives. "I have something I want to discuss with all of you," Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious. "Elena, I know you work very hard to support your granddaughters. And girls, I know you both dream of going to college someday." Maya and Rosa nodded, wondering where this conversation was leading. "Well, Sarah and I have talked about this extensively, and we want to set up college funds for both of you," Marcus continued. "We can't give you full scholarships, but we want to help make sure that money isn't the reason you can't pursue your education." Elena's hand flew to her mouth in shock. "Officer Tom, Marcus, that is too much. We cannot accept such a gift." "Yes, you can," Marcus said firmly but kindly. "And you will. This isn't charity, Elena, this is a debt. You saved my life, and this is the only way I know to repay that debt." Rosa looked confused. "But we didn't save your life to get paid," she said. "We helped you because you needed help." Marcus felt his heart swell with affection for this remarkable child. "I know that, Rosa. That's exactly why you deserve this help. You didn't help me expecting anything in return, which makes you the kind of people who should be rewarded." Maya was beginning to understand the magnitude of what Marcus was offering. College had always seemed like an impossible dream, something for rich kids whose parents could afford the fees. But now, suddenly, it seemed possible. "There's one more thing," Marcus continued. "Elena, I've talked to my captain about a job opening in the police department. It's in the civilian support division. Filing, answering phones, helping with paperwork. It comes with health insurance and a steady paycheck. Would you be interested?" Elena felt dizzy with the possibilities. A steady job with benefits would transform their lives. She wouldn't have to work 2 jobs anymore. And she could spend more time with her granddaughters. The health insurance alone would be worth more than she could calculate. I don't know what to say," Elena stammered. "Say yes," Maya urged her grandmother. "Please say yes." Elena looked at her granddaughters' hopeful faces, then at Marcus's sincere expression. She had spent years struggling to provide for her family, never asking for help, never expecting anything from anyone. But this man was offering her a chance at a better life for all of them. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes, I would be very interested in that job." The celebration in the hospital room was joyous but quiet, respecting the medical setting. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction knowing that he could help secure the future of the family who had secured his own future. Over the following months, the changes in the Gutierrez family's life were dramatic. Elena started her new job at the police department and quickly became a beloved member of the civilian support staff. Her co-workers were amazed by her work ethic and her genuine care for others. Maya's grades, which had already been good, improved even more when she no longer had to worry about money for school supplies and projects. She joined the science club and began seriously considering her dream of becoming a doctor. Rosa continued to be the compassionate, brave girl she had always been, but now she had the security of knowing that her future was bright. She started taking piano lessons with money from Elena's new job, and her natural musical talent began to flourish. Lucky became the healthiest and happiest dog in the neighborhood. Regular visits to the veterinarian, high-quality food, and a warm place to sleep every night transformed him from a scruffy stray into a beautiful, well-cared-for pet. But perhaps the most important change was the relationship between the two families. The Thompsons and the Gutierrezes became genuine friends, sharing holidays, birthdays, and special occasions together. Their children became close friends, with Emma and Jake treating Maya and Rosa like cousins. Marcus returned to active duty 3 months after his rescue, with a permanent reminder of his ordeal in the form of a slight limp from his broken leg. But he also carried with him a renewed appreciation for the goodness that exists in ordinary people, and a deeper understanding of the community he served. His fellow officers had heard the story of his rescue countless times, but they never got tired of it. The tale of the two poor sisters and their loyal dog who refused to abandon a trapped police officer became legendary at the precinct, inspiring other officers to look for ways to connect positively with the community they served. Chief Williams used the story in training sessions, reminding new recruits that police work wasn't just about enforcing laws. It was about building relationships with citizens who might someday be the difference between life and death. 2 weeks after his rescue, Marcus Thompson was finally well enough to receive visitors beyond his immediate family. The first people he asked to see were Elena, Maya, and Rosa Gutierrez. The hospital staff had heard so much about the family who saved Officer Thompson that they were excited to meet them in person. When Elena entered Marcus's hospital room with her granddaughters, she was amazed at the transformation. The man who had been pale and gaunt in the basement now looked healthy and strong, despite the cast on his leg and the bandages around his ribs. "Rosa, Maya," Marcus called out with genuine joy, his face lighting up at the sight of his rescuers. "And Mrs. Elena, I can't believe you're here." Rosa ran to his bedside, careful not to bump his injured leg. "Are you feeling better, Officer Thompson? Do your bones still hurt?" Marcus laughed at her direct question, remembering why he had enjoyed talking with Rosa during their long hours together in the warehouse basement. "My bones are healing very well thanks to you girls. The doctors say I'm going to be just fine." Maya hung back slightly, still somewhat shy around adults she didn't know well, but Marcus's warm smile encouraged her to come closer. "We brought you something," she said, pulling a handmade card from her backpack. The card was decorated with colorful drawings and filled with messages from Rosa's entire 5th grade class. When Maya had told her classmates about their adventure, the children had insisted on making a get-well card for the police officer their friend had helped save. "This is beautiful," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion as he read the children's messages. "Thank you so much. I'll treasure this forever." Elena watched this exchange with quiet satisfaction. Seeing Marcus healthy and surrounded by his own family gave her a deep sense of completion. Their decision to help him had been the right one, and the outcome had exceeded her wildest hopes. "Officer Thompson," Elena said formally, "we are very happy to see you recovering so well." "Please call me Marcus," he replied. "After what we've been through together, we're family now." Marcus had spent his recovery time thinking about how to properly thank the Gutierrez family for saving his life. Money seemed inadequate for such a gift, but he had come up with an idea that he hoped would make a lasting difference in their lives. "I have something I want to discuss with all of you," Marcus said, his tone becoming more serious. "Elena, I know you work very hard to support your granddaughters. And girls, I know you both dream of going to college someday." Maya and Rosa nodded, wondering where this conversation was leading. "Well, Sarah and I have talked about this extensively, and we want to set up college funds for both of you," Marcus continued. "We can't give you full scholarships, but we want to help make sure that money isn't the reason you can't pursue your education." Elena's hand flew to her mouth in shock. "Officer Tom," "Marcus, that is too much. We cannot accept such a gift." "Yes, you can," Marcus said firmly but kindly. "And you will. This isn't charity, Elena, this is a debt. You saved my life, and this is the only way I know to repay that debt." Rosa looked confused. "But we didn't save your life to get paid," she said. "We helped you because you needed help." Marcus felt his heart swell with affection for this remarkable child. "I know that, Rosa. That's exactly why you deserve this help. You didn't help me expecting anything in return, which makes you the kind of people who should be rewarded." Maya was beginning to understand the magnitude of what Marcus was offering. College had always seemed like an impossible dream, something for rich kids whose parents could afford the fees. But now, suddenly, it seemed possible. "There's one more thing," Marcus continued. "Elena, I've talked to my captain about a job opening in the police department. It's in the civilian support division. Filing, answering phones, helping with paperwork. It comes with health insurance and a steady paycheck. Would you be interested?" Elena felt dizzy with the possibilities. A steady job with benefits would transform their lives. She wouldn't have to work 2 jobs anymore. And she could spend more time with her granddaughters. The health insurance alone would be worth more than she could calculate. I don't know what to say, Elena stammered. Say yes, Maya urged her grandmother. Please say yes. Elena looked at her granddaughter's hopeful faces, then at Marcus's sincere expression. She had spent years struggling to provide for her family, never asking for help, never expecting anything from anyone. But this man was offering her a chance at a better life for all of them. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, I would be very interested in that job. The celebration in the hospital room was joyous but quiet, respecting the medical setting. Marcus felt a deep satisfaction knowing that he could help secure the future of the family, who had secured his own future. Over the following months, the changes in the Gutierrez family's life were dramatic. Elena started her new job at the police department and quickly became a beloved member of the civilian support staff. Her co-workers were amazed by her work ethic and her genuine care for others. Maya's grades, which had already been good, improved even more when she no longer had to worry about money for school supplies and projects. She joined the science club and began seriously considering her dream of becoming a doctor. Rosa continued to be the compassionate, brave girl she had always been, but now she had the security of knowing that her future was bright. She started taking piano lessons with money from Elena's new job, and her natural musical talent began to flourish. Lucky became the healthiest and happiest dog in the neighborhood. Regular visits to the veterinarian, high-quality food, and a warm place to sleep every night transformed him from a scruffy stray into a beautiful, well-cared-for pet. But perhaps the most important change was the relationship between the two families. The Thompsons and the Gutierrezes became genuine friends, sharing holidays, birthdays, and special occasions together. Their children became close friends, with Emma and Jake treating Maya and Rosa like cousins. Marcus returned to active duty 3 months after his rescue, with a permanent reminder of his ordeal in the form of a slight limp from his broken leg. But he also carried with him a renewed appreciation for the goodness that exists in ordinary people, and a deeper understanding of the community he served. His fellow officers had heard the story of his rescue countless times, but they never got tired of it. The tale of the two poor sisters and their loyal dog who refused to abandon a trapped police officer became legendary at the precinct, inspiring other officers to look for ways to connect positively with the community they served. Chief Williams used the story in training sessions, reminding new recruits that police work wasn't just about enforcing laws. It was about building relationships with citizens who might someday be the difference between life and death.